People say concerning the ban on homosexuality, for example, in the Old Testament, they'll say, well, homosexuality is against God's law and it's against nature's law. Well, in that case, why does nature see to it that so many people are born homosexual? Or, if you want to rephrase it, why does God have so many of his children preferring sex with their own gender? It doesn't help. It doesn't, in clarifying and elucidating this, it doesn't help to assume a supernatural authority. Whereas, if you look at the reasons given by Maimonides and the other sages for the practice of circumcision, it is precisely to dull and to blunt the sensation of an organ which I don't think even, well, I'll leave it there.
Francis Crick once, as a joke, articulated what he calls Orgel's second rule, named after his brilliant colleague Leslie Orgel, and that is that evolution is cleverer than you are. Now, this is not an endorsement of intelligent design by Francis Crick, needless to say. And in fact, if you understand Orgel's second rule correctly, you understand what is fraudulent. I use the word advisedly. What is fraudulent about the intelligent design movement? Because there's an equivocation on the word design. The products of evolution are brilliant, brilliantly designed. The process of design that produces those products is not itself brilliant or foresighted or intelligent at all. It is purposeless and mechanical and without any foresight. However, it is amazingly well suited to produce brilliant designs. And these designs have rationales.
I find myself in a difficult position because I'm kind of aware in America, and I'm not American as you can tell, that that the separation of church and state is deeply ingrained in the American politic, and rightly so. And John Kennedy, when challenged on his Catholicism, rightly said this is a separate matter, and as long as I don't bring my Catholicism into policy, you've nothing to complain about. And this is very, very, very laudable. But going back to the doctor, the hypothetical doctor and the astronomer, if you knew that one of the candidates that you're contemplating voting for believed that in the 19th century a man called Joseph Smith dug up some golden tablets which he translated and then conveniently lost, and translated, moreover, although a 19th century man translated them into 17th century English, and lots and lots of other...
And more importantly, unlike some of the... I mean, we also agree that the biblical stories are equally ridiculous, but the difference is we don't know they were written by known con men, but in fact he was a known felon.
Yes, that is true. And so if the person you're contemplating voting for believes all that, believes that the Garden of Eden was in Missouri, believes that Native Americans are the lost 10 tribes of Israel, believes that Jesus visited North America. I mean, these beliefs are barking mad. They contradict everything that's known historically, archaeologically. They contradict science, they contradict history. Now, is it a fair defense for such a candidate to say, oh, well, don't worry, I won't let my beliefs interfere with my policies? Well, maybe he won't, but do you want to vote for somebody who's capable of holding in his head such unrealistic nonsense? I mean, do you want a president who believes palpably foolish things, even if he promises that he won't actually let them... it's just back to the problem of the doctor and and the astronomer again.
At the Reason rally, I said something which came in for a certain amount of criticism, and I'm trying to decide whether I ought to apologize or not. I said something like that when you meet somebody like a Roman Catholic who holds ridiculous beliefs, for example, about the transubstantiation, that you should withhold respect from that belief. And I think it came across as withholding respect from the individual Catholic, which I must say is very tempting. But what I was trying to say was that you should challenge the Catholic, or whoever it is holds the absurd belief, in this case that a wafer, when blessed by a priest, literally turns into a first century Jew. I didn't quite hear that. Don't or do? Don't. No, okay. Anyway, it came across as being something that I should apologize for, because it suggested disrespect for the individual. I actually quoted Johann Hari, the British journalist, who says, "I respect you too much to respect your ridiculous beliefs." And that's not a bad way of putting it.
That's good.
But I actually thought of modifying that to, "I respect you too much to believe that you could possibly hold such ridiculous beliefs."
Yes.
And if you seriously call yourself a Roman Catholic, will you please either defend that belief in transubstantiation and explain why it's not ridiculous, or else admit that you're not really a Roman Catholic at all.
Yes.
You can't have it both ways. And that's, I think, what I should have said.
Yeah. There's just no way that you can politely suggest to somebody that they have devoted their life to a folly. But sometimes you have to say that.
Yeah.
And you can say, "Pardon me, sir or madam, not meaning any disrespect, but has it occurred to you that
You've wasted your life.
that you've wasted your life?" Yeah.
That is, Dan, that is actually, in my experience, the highest hurdle for people to clear. I once had the benefit of just by accident winding up at a dinner table with someone who had been a lifelong, super devout Catholic and had lost her faith like that morning. And so she was just, eyes ado with kind of the new moment in her life. And the thing she couldn't get over was how much time she had wasted.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the sunk cost of emotional attention, and I mean, all of the rituals and all of the things she didn't study when she was busy trying to be the most informed Catholic in human history. It just was. I mean, that was so agonizing, and it takes people so long to just blast through that and start a new moment in life.
It's a bit ironic to realize that church leaders understand this too. One of the more interesting themes in the discussion of the Dennet La Scola first study from some of the religious leaders was they were giving advice to preachers how to deal with candor with your congregation. And basically one of them said, I can't remember which, just as well that I can't, said, if you have an old congregation, don't try to change their minds. Just mouth the familiar words and let them go to their graves, basically, without anybody challenging their faith. However, if you have a mixed age congregation, then you've got your job cut out for you, because then, of course, what you have to do is speak with tongues, in tongues rather. You have to, with a forked tongue rather, what you have to do is say nothing that will offend or shake the faith of the old folks, while somehow letting on to the youngsters that you don't really mean it. Hard job.
I had an Australian friend who, when asked why it was that there are so many old people in church. He said, and you'll have to pardon my attempt at an Australian accent, cramming for the final?
You'll correct me if I'm wrong. It's Tertullian, isn't it, who says something like, it's variously translated, credo quia absurdum, that the very improbability of the thing, the very unlikelihood of it, the unlikelihood that anyone would fabricate such a thing, for example, that a Jew could be brought to believe something so extraordinary, is testimony to its truth. I'm sure there can't be anyone who doesn't think that's a little too easy, a little too facile. I myself, for example, have followed the career of a woman known vulgarly in the media as Mother Teresa, an Albanian named Agnes Bojashu, a Catholic fanatic operating in the greater Calcutta area. And I watched every stage of her career as a candidate for, and then the recipient of, beatification and shortly canonization. The canonization will require, and as the Vatican demands, the attestation of a miracle performed by her posthumous intercession. And the miracle's already been announced. A woman in Bengal, fortunately already a devout Catholic, by pressing a medal of Mother Teresa to her stomach, made a tumor go away, or so she says. All the witnesses to this have since recanted. All the doctors have given a much better explanation of how she was cured, of the swelling and the growth and what the medicines were and so forth, but they're still stuck with it. They have to go ahead with this process which will lead to countless untold suffering in India, because it will appear to license the bogus charlatanry of shaman medicine and intercessory medicine rather than the real thing. All of this will have to be gone through, this awful display, in the name of faith. And I just happen to have watched it at every stage, and I can tell you, it's depressingly easy to get a religious rumor started. You can count on an enormous amount of pre-existing credulity among illiterate, frightened, ill-educated populations. There isn't a literate, written down, properly attested witness of any real sort in the Gospels. It is, and you may as well admit it and stick to it because it's what you're good at, it involves an act of faith. Second, on the matter of my moral question, yes, it's true that Doug Wilson said that tithing was something I couldn't do, but then, I'm not moving the goalposts here, I don't think I'd regard giving all my money to the new St. Andrew's Church as a moral act. The only challenge that I've had so far that I really couldn't get out of, I should share it with you, was I was told, well, you couldn't do this. You couldn't say, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. No, but nor could you, as people of faith. You wouldn't dare. It would be blasphemy for you to do it. There's only one person who can do that, even on your account. So with respect, ladies and gentlemen, I think both my challenges stand. It hasn't been shown that I couldn't be a moral person despite my unbelief, and it has certainly not been demonstrated that unbelief will guarantee you against, the belief will, I'll say it again, that unbelief will ensure you against wickedness. You mentioned things like apartheid and Nazism. Well, let me just run it by you. Partly this often comes up because people say, what about the crimes and wickednesses of the secular world? The apartheid system in South Africa was actually a creation of the Dutch Reformed Church. It was justified theologically as the giving of a promised land to one Christian religious tribe, in which everyone else was supposed to be hewers of wood and drawers of water. It wasn't until the Dutch Reformed Church, under pressure, agreed to drop their racist preachments of many years that the apartheid system could be dismantled. The dictatorship in Greece in 1967 to 74 was proclaimed by the Greek Orthodox Church as a Greece for Christian Greeks. The Russian Orthodox Church at present, maybe this is one of the churches you don't recognize as Christian, I don't know, but it's currently become the bodyguard of the Vladimir Putin dictatorship in Russia. They are now producing, the Russian Orthodox Church, actual icons with halos around them of Joseph Stalin for distribution to extreme Russian nationalists and chauvinists for whom the church has become the spiritual sword and buckler. In Nazi Germany, prayers were said every year on the Führer's birthday by order of the churches for his survival and well-being. The first concordat signed by Hitler and by Mussolini in both cases was with the Vatican. If you take out the word fascist from any account of the 1920s and 30s, any reputable historical account, and you insert the words Christian right wing or actually Catholic right wing, you don't have to change a word of the rest of the sentence. And the third member of the Axis, the Japanese Empire, was led by someone who actually claimed he was himself a god, and to whom everyone in Japan was a serf and had to admit his godhead and divinity. And it was said to all of them, where would we know without the emperor? How would we know what to do? How would we know what a right action was? Without him, there would be screwing in the streets. There would be chaos. No one would know their bearings. Without our God, we would be rudderless. Many Japanese people, in fact, it's pitiful to report, still actually believe that. Now, I want to say, in other words, that religion is the outcome of unresolved contradictions in the material world. That if you make the assumption that it's man-made, then very few things are mysterious to you. If you make the assumption that religion is man-made, then you would know why, it would be obvious to you why, there are so many religions. When you make the assumption that it's man-made, you will understand why it is that religion has been such a disappointment to our species, that despite innumerable revivals, innumerable attempts again to preach the truth, innumerable attempts to convert the heathen, innumerable attempts to send missionaries all around the world, that the same problems remain with us, that nothing is resolved by this, that if all religions died out, or all were admitted to be false, instead of, as all believers will tell you, only some of them are false. In other words, we're faced with the preposterous proposition that religion are either all of them true, or none of them true, or only one exclusive preachment is true. And none of these seem to me coherent, and all of these seem to be the outcome of a man-made cult. Assume that all of them were discredited at the same time, all of our problems would be exactly what they are now. How do we live with one another? Where indeed do morals and ethics come from? What are our duties to one another? How shall we build the just city? How shall we practice love? How shall we deal with the baser, what Darwin called the lowly stamp of our original origins, which comes not from a pact with the devil or an original sin, but from our evolution as well. All these questions, ladies and gentlemen, would remain exactly the same. Emancipate yourself from the idea of a celestial dictatorship, and you've taken the first step to becoming free. Thank you.
Christopher has never been afraid of giving offence.
Yes.
What kind of reason is it not to do something because it might offend someone?
It's one of those terrible words, isn't it, that we're all supposed to respect is another one.
Yes.
One of the things which would like to say is let's all stop being so damned respectful.
Yes.
One of the problems with our world today is the way we're expected to be respectful all the time, whether respect is deserved or not.
Yes.
And we're expected to tiptoe around to avoid giving offence.
Yeah.
And I don't see any reason to do that if offence is deserved.
Exactly. I have an absolutely perfect thought. I have a sort of nightmare image of myself confronting someone with a knife in the street and saying, show me respect. And I'll say, well, look, I tell you what, I'll show you fear.
Yes.
I can do that,
yes.
but I can't show you respect.
Exactly.
I won't do it. I suppose you will continue to get hate mail. I know Christopher has had the weird experience of having to decide which is weirder, the people who are praying for him, not necessarily even to get better, but to find faith in his moment of physical illness, or those who are gloating that he will roast for eternity in hell.
I think they're about equal in numbers, aren't they? I wonder whether when they say, I'll pray for you, he gives that wonderful reply, I'll think for you.
Yes. Brilliant.
I preceded a question to you and said, atheists like Adolf Hitler, Richard Dawkins, and Joseph Stalin, ... Would you take umbrage?
I would take umbrage, but I would defend your right to say it.
Yes, but I know, but what I wanted to point out is that in most of your writings, when you talk about religious people, you you pluck out figures like the pilots who drove the airplanes into the Empire State Building.
Okay.
You pluck out people like the inquisitors of the Grand Inquisition, people like Jerry Falwell, and you must accept that for those of us who are of people of faith, to take these extremes, these horrible, horrible extremes, sinners in all our eyes now, as representative of our faith, is as offensive as you being lumped with Adolf and Joseph.
The difference between taking somebody like Hitler and taking somebody like the pilots who flew into the World Trade Center or Stalin. Stalin may have been an atheist, he was an atheist, but Stalin did not do his terrible deeds in the name of atheism. The people who flew planes into the World Trade Center precisely did their terrible deeds in the name of religion. They were righteous people. They believed they were doing right.
Okay.
They believed they were doing the will of Allah.
The Ben Affleck, whom I didn't know, but I understand he's Batman, was on Bill Maher's show with Sam Harris, and he vigorously and rather vitriolically attacked Sam, accusing him of racism because Sam has criticized Islam. And that's a very easy thing to do, but it's a very silly, superficial thing to do because, of course, Islam is not a race. So there's a kind of condescension about it, actually, as well, because the horrific things that are done in the Islamic world, not of course by all Muslims, very far from it, but the horrific things that are done to gay people, to women, stoning women to death for the crime of being raped, throwing acid in their face for the crime of refusing to marry a cousin, refusing to let them drive cars, refusing to let them leave the house unless in the company of a male relative. These horrific things, misogynistic things, are, it's almost as though one's saying, you brown people, we don't hold you to the same standards of non-misogyny as we hold ourselves. Now, isn't that a patronizing and condescending thing to do, to use a different standard, to say, we don't criticize you because because misogyny is part of your culture. And that, I think, is what Ben Affleck was doing among other things. It was a disagreeable episode.
For Professor Dawkins, considering that atheism cannot possibly have any sense of absolute morality, would it not then be an irrational leap of faith, which atheists themselves so harshly condemn, for an atheist to decide between right and wrong?
Absolute morality, the absolute morality that a religious person might profess would include what? Stoning people for adultery, death for apostasy, punishment for breaking the Sabbath. These are all things which are religiously based absolute moralities. I don't think I want an absolute morality. I think I want a morality that is thought out, reasoned, argued, discussed, and based upon, could almost say, intelligent design. Can we not design our society which has the sort of morality, the sort of society that we want to live in? If you actually look at the moralities that are accepted among modern people, among 21st century people, we don't believe in slavery anymore, we believe in equality of women, we believe in being gentle, we believe in being kind to animals. These are all things which are entirely recent. They have very little basis in biblical or Quranic scripture. They are things that have developed over historical time through a consensus of reasoning, sober discussion, argument, legal theory, political and moral philosophy. These do not come from religion. To the extent that you can find the good bits in religious scriptures, you have to cherry pick.
You search your way through the Bible or the Quran, and you find the occasional verse that is an acceptable profession of morality. And you say, look at that, that's religion. And you leave out all the horrible bits. And you say, oh, we don't believe that anymore. We've grown out of that. Well, of course we've grown out of it. We've grown out of it because of secular moral philosophy and rational discussion.
And the reason that I turned to this topic, not a topic that I had ever thought I would ever write on, was because I began to be worried about what was happening with religion in the world. It seemed to be mounting in importance in many spheres, playing a very disruptive and worrying role. And as I looked around, I realized that I hadn't the faintest idea what was going to happen with religion in the next 100 years, in the next 20 years, in the next 5 years. And I looked around to see if anybody else did, and I decided that nobody did. Just to dramatize how ignorant we are of where religion is taking us, I want to walk you through 5 scenarios. There's many others. And I just want you to think, which of these is most likely to be true? One is that, alas, the Enlightenment is over in spite of the efforts in Edinburgh and elsewhere, and that religion is, in fact, going to sweep the planet. Here's a recent map of the religions of the world, showing how they dominate in various regions. And if religion does sweep the planet, you might want to know which religion is going to sweep the planet and go to fixation, as it were. Whichever religion it is, it will be a religion that most of the people in the world do not now adhere to. There is no majority religion, and this means there's going to be a tremendous amount of strife if that's what the future holds for us. Well, maybe that's not what's going to happen. Maybe, in spite of the recent uproar, religion is in its death throes, as Hume, I think, and many others predicted back several hundred years ago. They were just wrong by a few hundred years. Maybe science and technology in the modern world will in fact, lead to the evaporation or extinction of religion. It's possible, I suppose, that within the lives of our grandchildren, that Vatican City will become the European Museum of Roman Catholicism. Maybe Mecca will become Disney's Magic Kingdom of Allah. This does not seem very likely, but we have to remember that the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul started off as a church and later was a mosque, and now it's a museum. Worth bearing in mind. Well, there's 2 hypotheses. Here's a third, that religions transform themselves into creedless moral teams. The actual creeds drop out of the running, more or less. They become vestigial. And it's the moral teamwork, the organization, the infrastructure, and perhaps a particular sense of duty. And this might be different with one religion concentrating on social justice and another concentrating on the environment and so forth. We could imagine that all that really remains that shows their religion is the pageantry, and that we have different varieties of pageantry in different colors, different songs, and, well, sort of like sports teams, would you want your daughter to marry a Chelsea fan? It might be rather like that. Unlikely, yes, I guess unlikely, but wished for by many, and some religions do seem to be heading in this direction. Another possibility is that religions may just diminish in prestige and visibility rather the way smoking has in recent years, and that we decide, well, yes, if you are religious, you can be elected to public office, but as long as you don't make too big a deal of it and don't smoke in public, or as long as you don't blow the smoke in our direction, it's all right. That also seems a bit unlikely. And then there's one more hypothesis that we might want to consider in addition to these 4. And this is the one that, according to Newsweek magazine, is actually believed by a majority of my countrymen. And that is that Judgment Day arrives. And that Jesus Christ, God's chosen king, will destroy the world at Armageddon. Now, there's 5 hypotheses. They're all quite different. And what I want to draw to your attention is that all but one of these, at most, is wildly wrong, and nobody knows which one is right. Nobody knows. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. If they do, they've been doing an awful lot of research and keeping it very quiet. That, it would seem to me, is reason enough to want to study religion with scientific intensity, because such an important phenomenon, we should try to get a grip on it, understand it well enough so that we can predict what it's likely to do in the future and why. Now, here's a beautiful dairy cow, and the question I want to raise is, who designed it? Well, the answer, of course, is complicated, because this is an animal that's been under domestication for thousands of years, actually. And much of the design work on the dairy cow was done thousands of years earlier, hundreds of thousands of years earlier, by the process of evolution, by natural selection. Here's the aurochs, which is the pretty well established, the wild ancestor of the domesticated cattle in the world today. And aurochs were wild, as I say, and what that means is that what they were for is for themselves. Aurochs were for making more aurochs, just the way beetles are for making more beetles and palm trees are for making more palm trees. But once they became domesticated, then they were for us. And the domesticators, first unconsciously, as Darwin puts it, in the Origin of Species, he has this wonderful pedagogical transition. He goes from deliberate breeding, improvement of the breed, foresighted, deliberate breeding. Then he does what he calls unconscious selection. This is the unintended consequences of just favoring the best animal. You're not trying to change the breed. You're just favoring breeding some animals and not breeding others. The runts of the litter are just not being kept. And then, of course, before that, we have just natural selection. So we have sort of three grades of involvement in the process. Very self-conscious redesign of the animal, and certainly in the case of the dairy cow, we can see that the cow was very carefully analyzed, sort of reverse engineered, and every part of it was subjected to intense scrutiny, and whether we want to improve this bit or improve that bit, what it's good for, what the optimal arrangement is. This is very much a matter of deliberate human design and redesign. Well, now, why am I talking to you about cows? I'm supposed to be talking about religions. Well, because I want to say exactly the same thing is true of religions. Religions have evolved over thousands of years. They're actually not as old as cows. That is, the ancestry of religion only goes back maybe tens of thousands of years, not millions of years. And the evolution of religion began with, in effect, wild forms of religion, and then they became domesticated. And when they became domesticated, there was first unconscious selection of features, and later very deliberate, foresighted, carefully reasoned attempts to revise and to refine and to change the designs of religions. So what I want to suggest is that the reason that the uninformative reason of why religions have such a hold on us, why the Enlightenment was wrong, why religions have not vanished, is that they have been brilliantly designed over the eons to do just that, to have a hold over us, to be robust, wonderfully self-maintaining organizations that are designed to hold us in thrall. And the design process has an evolutionary history. In recent years, it's been under very conscious and self-conscious human, not under human control, because the best laid plans of mice and men often gang and clay. But there has been the intention to revise and refine the design of religions. In other words, what I want to talk about is the project of reverse engineering religions. Looking under the hood, seeing how the parts work, seeing why they work the way they do. It's only when we've done this job well that we'll understand what we might want to do in the future to steer religions in the directions that we think are benign. Well, now here's another thing that might really impress anybody. Cause for wonder. You're out in the meadow and you see an ant climbing up a blade of grass. She climbs and she climbs. If she falls, she gets back on the blade and climbs again. Climbs again, she falls, and she climbs and she climbs and she climbs until she reaches the very top of the blade of grass. And you might wonder, here's an expenditure of energy too. This is purposive behavior if I ever saw it. What on earth is the ant doing this for? What benefit accrues to the ant? Is she looking for food? Is she looking for a mate? Is she lost? Is she trying to get home? Wrong answers. In fact, no benefit at all accrues to the ant. Well, then, is this just a fluke? Yes, it's just a fluke. It's a brain fluke, a lancet fluke, Dicrocelium dendriticum, a parasitic little brainworm that has to get into the belly of a cow or a sheep in order to continue its reproductive cycle. What does it do? It commandeers a passing ant, climbs into the ant's brain, and drives it like an all-terrain vehicle up the blade of grass to a position where it is more likely to be eaten by a cow or a sheep. Spooky. It's not an isolated case. I've begun collecting some of these marvelous cases of manipulative symbiotic relationships, manipulative host manipulation by parasites. Here's another one, sort of fascinating, very similar actually. Toxoplasma gondii is a parasite that infects mice. And in order to continue its life cycle, it has to get, in order to reproduce, it has to get into the belly of a cat. Well, now, what would you do if you were in a mouse and you wanted to get into a cat? You would turn the mouse into Mighty Mouse. Make the mouse bold, fearless, so it runs out in the open. That's what mice do when they are infested with Toxoplasma gondii. They're more likely that way to be eaten by a cat. I could give you other examples, but two we'll have to do. There's not that much time. What we have in these cases, we have a hijacker, the parasite that infects the brain and induces suicidal behavior on behalf of a cause other than one's own genetic fitness. Gosh, that's scary. Does anything like that ever happen to us? Yeah. Well, I want to remind you that the Arabic word Islam means submission. It means surrender of self-interest to the will of Allah. But Islam is not alone. In Christianity, we have the same theme. This is a not very good photograph of a parchment page, music manuscript page done mid-16th century. I found this in a Paris bookstall about 50 years ago. And the text is interesting. What it says is, Semen est verbum Dei sator autem Christus, omnis qui audet eum manebit in eternum. By the way, I think you can maybe make out, if you're up close, that the Christus is spelled with two Greek letters first, chi and rho, and then the scribe has put an R after the rho. This is a this is a mutation in the copying, in the mindless copying of this text. And it's also, of course, showing how a text gets translated from one language into another. So what does that mean? It means the Word of God is a seed, and the sower of the seed is Christ. And all who hear it will have eternal life. That's the quid pro quo. Well, this idea of planting the seed is a little different from the idea of infesting the brain with a parasite. But in fact, Christianity very often does adopt the language and the imagery that Islam uses as well. Consider these words. The heart of worship is surrender. And these words, surrendered people obey God's word even if it doesn't make sense. Now, who said those? These are the recent words of Pastor Rick Warren, the author of a book called The Purpose-Driven Life. This is an evangelical Christian book which has sold 30 million copies in the United States since it was published a few years ago. This is one of the most influential religious figures in America today. James proposed that when our ancestors began living in larger and more complicated societies, larger groups of people, they found that decision-making was a very difficult and fraught behavior. Few things more anxiety-provoking than not being able to decide what to do next or what to think about next. And what they did, not knowing what they were doing, was they cast about for some way of getting off the dime, of making a move. And so they hit upon all sorts of rituals of decision-making, throwing lots, auguries, cutting open fowls and looking at their entrails, pouring melted wax into water, looking at the clouds, sacrificing virgins to see which way the smoke blows. All of these elaborate rituals were invented by people who didn't really know what they were doing. This is unconscious selection, creating rituals that permitted them, in effect, to ask their departed ancestors what to do next. And there are many reasons why this is a really good idea, even if you don't understand why. For one thing, if what you decide to do next turns out badly, you can blame your ancestor, who can't talk back. But it's a great way of just getting you up and running. After all, flipping a coin is okay if you're trying to decide whether to eat those berries. If you're going to decide whether to go to war or whether to marry this woman, it's just a bit too, flippant. You need something more powerful to hold your resolve. And if, as James suggested, our ancestors had a real problem with resolve, any ritual that would simply give them backbone, that would give them confidence in their own decision so they could execute it and keep everybody in the group on the same path, would be a valuable trick to have in your kit. So what I'm suggesting is that organized religions, the religions of today, we also have wild religions today, tribal religions, sometimes called primitive religions, but the organized religions of today descended from folk religions, which were wild. When we became conscious, deliberate stewards of our ideas, this changed everything. Now, as I said before, evolution comes up with brilliant designs, and these designs have rationales. Brilliant rationales, but they don't have to be in anybody's head. Dicrocelium dendriticum, the brain fluke, doesn't understand why it is driving that ant up the blade of grass. It's stupid. It's got the IQ, roughly, I would guess, of a carrot. Doesn't even have a brain, really. It's just the beneficiary of this brilliant design. Let's look at a case a little closer to us. The cuckoo. The cuckoo, as you know, is a parasite. Cuckoos do not make their own nests. The mother cuckoo, when she's ready to lay her egg, finds a likely host pair with their ready-made nest with the eggs already in it. She waits till they fly off. She darts down, lays her egg in the host nest, and departs, never to return. The hosts come back, and in due course, the cuckoo chick hatches, typically before the other eggs. Oh, by the way, the cuckoo mother may sometimes, when she layers her eggs, she may push one of the other eggs out. That's just in case the hosts can count. But in any case, once the fledgling cuckoo hatches, it engages in the most obviously purposive behavior you can imagine, tries to push the other eggs out of the nest. Now, that is certainly a brilliant stratagem that has evolved. Who benefits? The cuckoo does, but the cuckoo doesn't know. The cuckoo is an innocent little featherless fledgling. Happily, the cuckoo doesn't understand the rationale. Many of the ploys of organized religions, I try to show in the book, are similarly clever stratagems that work to benefit the fitness of the religions. And the people who engage in these stratagems can be, in effect, as innocent as the cuckoo. But in fact, since they have larger brains than the cuckoo, they can also understand the rationales. They can come to understand the rationales, and they might even come to feel a little bit ashamed of their use of some of these ploys that they start out using in all innocence. When folk religions became organized religions, there was a shift from the free-floating rationales of natural selection to the represented rationales. Now we're getting into the world of religious leaders, priests, imams, and so forth, trying to redesign their religious institutions to make life easier for themselves and to improve the robustness of the religion. And of course, sometimes they made big mistakes. Sometimes they designed their religions right into extinction. Why? Orgel's second rule. Evolution is cleverer than you are. When you start tampering with something, if you don't get it right, evolution may punish you with extinction. But nevertheless, the rationales of the stewards were responsive to an entirely new set of goals, to represented goals, just like the goals of animal domesticators. Many of the features of that cow are not for the benefit of the cow. They're for our benefit. And a similar design rationale can be found in many of the features of religions.
I'd like to know first, you said that the career of Jesus of Nazareth involved a ministry of miracles and exorcisms. When you say exorcism, do you mean that you believe in devils too?
What I meant there was that most historians agree that Jesus of Nazareth practiced miracle working and he practiced exorcisms. I'm not committing myself, nor are historians committing themselves to the reality of demons, but they are saying that Jesus did practice exorcism and he practiced healing.
So you believe that Jesus of Nazareth caused devils to leave the body of a madman and go into a flock of pigs that hurled themselves down the Gadarene slopes into the sea?
Do I believe that's historical? Yes.
Right. That would be sorcery, wouldn't it, though?
No, it would be an illustration of Jesus' ability to command even the forces of darkness, and therefore an illustration of the sort of divine authority that he was able to command and exercise.
And you believe he was born of a virgin?
Yes, I believe that as a Christian. I couldn't claim to prove that historically. That's not part of my case tonight. But I as a Christian, I believe that.
And I know you believe in the resurrection, but
yes, and for that I think that we have good evidence.
As a matter of biblical, what shall we call it, consistency, it's said in one of the Gospels that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves of Jerusalem were opened, and all the tenants of the graves walked the streets and greeted their old friends. It makes the resurrection sound rather commonplace in the greater Jerusalem area.
That's in the Gospel of Matthew, and that's actually attached to a crucifixion narrative.
That's what I said. It says at the time of the crucifixion.
That's right. At the time of the crucifixion, it says that there were appearances of Old Testament saints in Jerusalem at the time. This is part of Matthew's description of the crucifixion scene.
Do you believe that?
I don't know whether Matthew intends this to be apocalyptic imagery or whether he means this to be taken literally. I've not studied it in any depth, and I'm open-minded about it. I'm willing to be convinced one way or the other.
You'll see the reason I'm pressing you is this because, we know from Scripture that the pharaohs, the magicians, could produce miracles. In the end, Aaron could outproduce them. But what I'm suggesting to you is even if the laws of nature can be suspended and great miracles can be performed, it doesn't prove the truth of the doctrine of the person who's performing them. Or would you not agree to that?
Not necessarily. I think that's right.
So somebody could be casting out devils from pigs, and that wouldn't prove he was the Son of God.
I think that's right. In fact, there were Jewish exorcists. The only point that I was trying to make there was that this was illustrative of the kind of divine authority that Jesus claimed, especially since he didn't cast them out in God's name, or he didn't perform miracles by praying to God. He would do them in his own authority. So that Jesus exercised an authority that was simply unheard of at that time, and for which he was eventually crucified because it was thought to be blasphemous.
Well, it was thought to be blasphemous to claim to be the Messiah, to be exact. The people who got the closest look at him, the Jewish Sanhedrin, thought that his claims were not genuine. So remember, if you're resting anything on eyewitnesses, the ones who we definitely know were there thought he was bogus. But okay, I think I've got a rough idea, assuming you make that assumption of his pre-existing divinity, that it's a presuppositionalist case, I can see what you're driving at.
Well, no, I'm not a presuppositionalist.
I've got another question for you, which is this. How many religions in the world do you believe to be false?
I don't know how many religions in the world there are, so I
Well,
can't
could you
answer.
name... Right. Fair enough. I'll see if I can't narrow that down. That was a clumsily asked question, I admit. Do you regard any of the world's religions to be false?
Excuse me?
Do you regard any of the world's religions to be false preaching?
Yes, I think, yeah, certainly.
Would you name one then?
Islam.
Right, that's quite a lot.
Pardon me?
That's quite a lot.
Yes.
Do you think it's moral to preach false religion?
No.
So religion is responsible for quite a lot of wickedness in the world right there.
Certainly.
Right.
I'd be happy to concede that. I would agree with that.
So if I was a baby being born in Saudi Arabia today, would you rather I was me or a Wahhabi Muslim?
Would I be? You'd rather be what?
Would you rather it was me? It was an atheist baby or a Wahhabi baby?
I don't have any preference as to whether you would.
You do. As bad as that. Okay.
Let's talk first about whether there are any good arguments to think that atheism is true. Now, it seems to me that you're rather ambivalent here, that you say, you redefine atheism to mean a sort of atheism or non-theism.
That's what it means.
But how do you distinguish then the different varieties of non-theism? For example, what is normally called atheism, agnosticism, or the view of verificationists that the statement God exists is simply meaningless?
Well, I mean, there are different schools of atheism, as you say, but there's no claim I know how to make that says atheism is true, because atheism is the statement that a certain proposition isn't true. So I wish you'd get this bit right, because it's there you go again.
Well,
I just devoted a little time to this. I said it is not in itself a belief or a system. It simply says you can get by better, probably, we think, without the assumption that no one who wants you to worship a God has ever been able to come up with a good enough reason to make you do it.
Now, so the point is, though, that on your definition of atheism or non-theism, it really embodies a diversity of views, such as agnosticism, what is normally called atheism, or this verificationism. Now, which of those do you hold to within this umbrella of atheism? Are you an atheist who asserts the proposition God does not exist, or do you simply withhold belief in God in the way the agnostic does?
Right. On some days, I'm a greater. No, I'm not going to do you that much of a favor. On some days, I'm a great admirer of Thomas Huxley, who had the great debate with Bishop Wilberforce in Oxford at the Natural History Museum about Darwinism in the mid 19th century, and who was known as Darwin's bulldog. We would now say Darwin's pit bull, and who completely trounced the good bishop. But I can't thank him for inventing the term agnostic. And I can't thank him for some of his social Darwinist positions either, some of which are rather
unattractive. Now, I need an answer to this. My time is fleeting.
But because I think agnosticism is evasive. To me, yes, if you talk about the power of the Holy Spirit and so forth, to me, that is meaningless. It's to me, I'm sorry, I've tried. It's white noise. It's like saying there is only one God and Allah is his messenger. It's gibberish to me. There are many of us, I'm sorry, there are just many of us of whom this is the case. It may be true, it is true.
Okay, Mr. Hitchens, I got to press you here because time is fleeting.
Feel free.
What is your view exactly?
Press away.
Do you affirm God does not exist, or do you simply withhold belief?
I think once I have said that I've never seen any persuasive evidence for the existence of something, and I've made real attempts to study the evidence presented and the arguments presented, that I will go as far as to say, have the nerve to say, that it does not therefore exist, except in the minds of its, except in the Henry Jamesian subjective sense that you say of it being so real to some people in their own minds that it counts as a force in the world, yes.
Okay, so you do affirm then that God does not exist. Now, what I want to know, and do you have any justification for that?
I think I've come unwired in some horrible way.
You're fine.
Are you sure?
Do you have any arguments leading to the conclusion that God does not exist?
Well, I would rather, I think, I'm wondering if I'm boring anybody now. I would rather say, I'd rather state it in reverse and say I find all the arguments in favor to be fallacious or unconvincing. And I'd have to add that though this isn't my reason for not believing in it, that I would be very depressed if it was true. But that's a quite different thing. I don't say of atheism that it's at all morally superior. That would be very risky. I wouldn't admit that it was at all morally inferior either, but we can at least be acquitted on the charge of wishful thinking.
I wonder if that's the case. Would you agree that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence?
Well, you know, I'm not sure that I would agree.
Okay. Let's turn to the moral argument and talk about that a little bit. I think you've misunderstood the moral argument.
Given the stakes, Doctor, sorry. Given the stakes, you're not saying, we're not talking about unicorns or tooth fairies or leprechauns here. We're talking about an authority that would give other human beings the right to tell me what to do in the name of God. So for a claim like that, if there's no evidence for it, it seems to me not a small question.
No, it's certainly not a small question. But
because you're making a very, very, very large claim. Your evidence had better be absolutely magnificent, it seems to me. And it's the lack of magnificence, I think, that began to strike me first.
One final question.
So I'm recording this video after the projected win by Donald Trump in the American elections. So I apologize if I sound a little bit down and disappointed. Anyway, let's jump right into it. So, last week I uploaded a video featuring some of the most exciting arguments I had found at the time. However, in my short-sightedness, I used the thumbnail with the words, "The Three Horsemen of Religion." Now, for those who do not get the origin of the reference, I'm about to explain how it came about and everything. For those who understood the reference, however, most of you guys were mildly outraged, and rightfully so, because not only did I not include the fourth horseman in the thumbnail, I did not include him in the thumbnail. In the content, as well. Both the thumbnail and the video only featured Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and Richard Dawkins. So guys, I'd like to sincerely apologize for that, and I hope I've made things right in this video. I shall never make such a silly, stupid mistake like that ever again. Now, for those who do not know about the four Horsemen of Religion, let me take you back to 2007. On September 30th of that year, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, and Sam Harris sat together for a 2-hour unmoderated conversation at Hitchens' residence in Washington, D.C. The discussion was an in-depth one about modern atheism, and to say that its video went immediately viral after hitting the internet will be a massive understatement, man. The rigorous, enthralling, and path-breaking exchange is even termed to this day as the dawn of the new atheism movement. That's just how serious this conversation over cocktails was. Now, it's important to note that up until this discussion, all four had already published books critical of religion and promoting atheism. 3 of them had even gone on to make the New York bestsellers list up until that time. But still, the impact that this discussion had on religion is impossible to overstate. From 1981 to 2007, the United States ranked as one of the most religious countries in the world, with religiosity percentages changing very little from one decade to the next. In fact, up until that year 2007, the US had been an outlier nation compared to other developed nations. That's because citizens usually tend to get secularized as their country's economies modernize, but that wasn't the case with the United States. Now fast forward, in stark contrast, according to the World Value Survey, in 10 years from 2007 to 2017, the US went from being one of the world's most religious nations to the 11th least religious country in the world, which was a startling drop in the blink of an eye considering the trend in previous decades. Now, to be fair, all this cannot be just attributed to the four horsemen and their contribution in later years to atheism. Many people convert and leave religions for myriads of reasons. That said, when these people are ready to leave behind an ideology that has been pushed down their throats their whole lives, they usually certainly need a helping hand to not only let them know that it's okay, but also reinforce that they are indeed making the right decision. That's exactly where the likes of Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris come in, and it's exactly what the discussions on atheism did for me. Without the arguments and discussions, I think I'd be stuck in a fearful state longer than I was, in the state where you're not sure you're actually doing the right thing by defying something that you've believed for so long. Remember, before the four horsemen arose and provided the foundation of intellectual reasoning for millions of people harboring religious doubts, almost anyone with religious doubts at the time will usually keep their doubts to themselves or present them just to their imams, rabbis, priests, or ministers, all of whom, as you can guess, will just assure the doubter that the devil is just testing their faith and they should not fall. Now, I know what you're probably wondering, where are they now, these four horsemen? Well, all four of these gentlemen would go on to do great things on the frontier of promoting atheism, and I can confidently remind you that I wouldn't have started this channel or gone on my own successful deconstruction journey if it were not for them. Hitchens, who passed on in December 15th, 2011, which definitely wasn't long after they had the discussion. Anyway, Hitchens, may he rest in peace, was the author of a book called God is Not Great, and he was named among the top 100 public intellectuals by Prospect and Foreign Policy magazines. He also served on the advisory board of the Secular Coalition for America. Before his death, Hitchens would also publish a collection of articles and essays in his book called Arguably. In these publications, coupled with multiple appearances he made while battling esophageal cancer, will give Hitchens a platform to assure the world that he remained an astute atheist through it all. He would even specifically speak on the culture of deathbed conversions and condemned attempts to convert the terminally ill, which he opposed as bad taste, and I actually talked about this in the dedicated video about Christopher Hitchens' sharpest arguments against religion. Please check it out if you haven't already, because it's easily one of my favorite videos to ever create. Next, Sam Harris. Most of you guys know him already, as he remains one of the most controversial figures in the world today. As I mentioned in his dedicated video, I vehemently disagree with him on certain issues, but that's neither here nor there. On the frontier of atheism, Harris has written multiple best-selling non-fiction books, including but not limited to The Moral Landscape, Letter to a Christian Nation, The End of Faith, and Waking Up. Actually, as I previously mentioned, one of the earliest videos I watched amidst my deconstruction was of Sam Harris, where he debated Jordan Peterson. Yeah, that was a pivotal moment, even though I had shown skeptic tendencies for several years up until then, at that point. As for Richard Dawkins, he too is still around and kicking, and is mostly known as the author of the book titled The God Delusion, and he is also the director of a Channel 4 television documentary titled The Root of All Evil. And he is also the founder of the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science. And by the way, on what Richard Dawkins thinks about the title, The Horseman, he wrote the following. I don't object to the horseman label, by the way. I'm less keen on the term new atheist because it isn't clear to me how we differ from old atheists. And last but by no means least, Daniel Dennett. Unfortunately, he too isn't with us today. He passed on just this year on April 19th. 2024, at the ripe age of 82. In his life, Daniel Dennett achieved great things just like his peers, including being the author of two phenomenal books called Breaking the Spell and Darwin's Dangerous Idea. Throughout his life, Daniel Dennett was also a vocal supporter of the Clergy Project, an organization that supports clergy in the United States who no longer believe in God or any supernatural elements and cannot fully participate their duties or perform their duties within their communities anymore. Top all of this off, Dennett was also a member of the Secular Coalition for America Advisory Board and a member of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. So yeah, as you can see, they all went on to do great things with their lives, including Hitchens, who passed on shortly after their sitting. And in fact, I can confidently speculate that if you're a fan of any young atheist today, chances are that individual was inspired by one or all of these horsemen of the non-apocalypse. That is all I have for you guys today, and I hope you've loved both the arguments laid out by these brilliant minds throughout the video and the brief rundown of how the title came to be. I also hope you've smashed the like button and left a comment below so YouTube can recommend the video to even more people who might appreciate it. Other than that, thanks a lot for sticking with me to the end, man, and I'll see you all in the next one. Love you guys. Peace.